G'day guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be taking a look at my first breakdown of an AFL fantasy team going into 2025, as AFL have officially announced that AFL Fantasy is live for everyone. But before we get into that, guys, on screen right now is a code to join our channel's AFL Fantasy League. Now this is going to be an open league, so that means anyone can join. Last year we did a closed one with only 18 people. Now that the channel's grown so much, we're going to let everyone get involved. And the winner of the AFL Fantasy League at the end of the season of 2025 will win a prize. Me and my brother haven't really decided what that's going to be just yet. So guys, make sure to go join the league right now with this code on screen. But for now, let's take a look at the team. So this is obviously what you're greeted with, the AFL Fantasy page to pick your team. And obviously you got the pretty similar stuff that it's always been. But this year your remaining salary is 17.8 million because price rises have happened. We did talk about that in a video a couple of weeks ago about some changes for AFL Fantasy, but I've already actually made my team. So right now, this is my AFL Fantasy team. Very early on, there will be a lot of changes, of course, as pre-seasons do begin, but this is what I'm kind of starting off with, and in the next couple of months, I'll be making some changes and stuff. I'll quickly break down a couple of players. So starting with our defenders, I've got Harry Sheezel, Max Holmes, Callum Mills, Kitty Coleman, Travalia, El Harley, and then on the bench, I've got Gibcus and Reed. So Harry Sheezel's my premium player in defense. I absolutely loved his season last year. He moved into the midfield and didn't really have a lot of impact on his score. I think with another preseason, Sheezel's going to be amazing. Max Holmes, maybe a little bit of a surprising pick for some people as my second highest priced player, but in the final series last year, he broke into the midfield for the Cats and was really instrumental. And when he went down in that Brisbane game with injury, I think that was the main reason why they lost that game, the Cats. So I think Max Holmes in for an amazing year, and he's going to be big for the Cats. Mills and Coleman I'm going to combine for the main reason of the injuries. They're going to be so popular. I think most people are going to pick them up. Mills more for the fact, like in 2023, how good a season he had, and Kitty Coleman, obviously the final series he had in 2023 was massive, so I think he's ready to burst onto the scene. And then the two lower priced defenders, Travalia and El Harley. A lot of talk about Travalia being a high pick for the Saints, getting some early games, playing off of halfback, along with El Harley. He was picked up as a mid-season draftee, I believe, for the Bombers, and I think he's definitely going to get some games. He was kind of unlucky to not get some for the Bombers late last year, but I think he's ready to go, so I think he's going to get some games for the Bombers this year. And then the two bench players, Gibcus, who obviously is injured for a lot of the year, would be good for score, and Zach Reed, pretty much the same reason. Looking at the midfielders, I've got Zach Merritt, Jack Steele, Connor Rosie, Will Ashcroft, Will Day, Sid Draper, Levi Ashcroft, and then Josh Smiley. And on the bench, I've got Leo Lombard and Jagger Smith. We'll see how that plays out with the reserves, first of all, because they are very high priced. I want to kind of see how their pre-seasons go in their pre-season matches before I do decide on the top draftees to pick through the midfield. But Sid Draper's already had some massive raps on his side. Pros, Levi Ashcroft, I mean, if he's anything like his brother, he's going to be a star. And Josh Smiley, the reason why I've gone with him over Lalore is basically because there's been talk about some injury. I think it's a hamstring that he's had going into the pre-season, so I'm just a little bit shaky on that one. But Josh Smiley has some great raps for Richmond, and he'll get games being at the Tigers. But looking at the premiums of the midfield, Zach Merritt and Jack Steele. Jack Steele had a bit of an up and down year, I believe, last year, and he said that he'll have had a pretty good preseason so far for the Saints, so I think he's in for a massive year. And a couple of years ago, he was like averaging 110, 115 for the whole season a couple of years ago, so I think Jack Steele can get back to that and be a great pickup. Zach Merritt's my highest priced player in the midfield. I think that Zach has a very good start to seasons, former Boundary Riders medalist as well, so I kind of had to put him in the team. He deserved it for what a great season he had. And Connor Rosie, I mean, 996k sounds like a lot, but he's got a high ceiling, I think. Obviously, he had a lot of injuries last year for the Power in his first year as captain, so I think if he can return to that great form he had a couple of years ago, I think he's going to be massive for Port. Will Ashcroft and Will Day, they obviously had an injury-riddled season, but I think he's ready to go. And Will Ashcroft, I think that final series showed how good he's going to be, and I think he's ready to break through in 2025. Now the Ruckman, bit of a surprising pick, I think, for some people. Tim English, Tom De Koning, and Tom Campbell. Tim English and Tom De Koning as the Ruckman. A lot of people are picking Tristan Cherry. I may change to that as we get closer to the season, but I think Tim English, even though he's priced quite high, I think he had a bit of a down year, so I think he can definitely bounce back to being the highest priced player like he was at the start of AFL Fantasy in 2024. Tom De Koning had a good mid-season patch where he was the #1 ruck for Carlton and then just had an injury, so I think he's priced a little bit lower lower than what he's actually worth, and I think he's going to have a big year. And Tom Campbell as the reserve, that's definitely a wait and see until, you know, the round 1 teams come in before I decide that ruck spot if someone does get picked. And finally, probably the hardest position to go for this year is the forward line. So in the forward line, I've got Jason Horne-Francis, Isaac Rankin, Matthias Filippo, Bailey Smith, Caleb Daniel, and Isaac Kako. On the bench, I've got Daniel Curtin, Joe Berry, and the utility sub is Caden Cleary. Now, Jason Horne-Francis, I think he's going to be the most popular forward this year because I think he's kind of like, I feel like a lot of people are thinking he's going to be like the Isaac Heaney of last season. He's going to get more midfield minutes, I think, for Port Adelaide. He averaged quite well in the end. I didn't really realise how well he did, but I think he's ready to have another great year, Jason Horne-Francis. I think he'll get a lot more midfield time, and I think he's probably the best forward you're going to get at this stage, probably the most bankable. Isaac Rankin, he had a really good year last year, but missed a lot of games through injury, and then it's this 4-week suspension. So this is a little bit of a wait and see, but I do think the Crows can add a little bit more pace into their midfield going into 2025, and I think Isaac Rankin's perfect for that. And if he can kick goal, I mean, if he can have a 20+ goal season and play midfield as well, I think he's going to have a breakout year. So 8.16, a bit of a low price, but for a forward, I think he's ready to go. Matthias Filippo ended the season brilliantly for the Saints. He's said to have had a really good pre-season, so I think he's ready to go. Bailey Smith's the most popular person to pick from this year. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Caleb Daniel, he's priced so low because of the fact that he played so many games as a sub last year and got so many low scores. He won't be doing that this year. He's already confirmed that he's going to be playing halfback for North Melbourne, picking up those easy touches. You could probably bank him for 20-25 touches a game and a certain amount of marks. He's such a good user. North Melbourne desperately need that. So I think Caleb Daniel's a must pick in my opinion. And then the 3 rookies I'm going to talk about here in the forward line, Kako, Curtin, and Berry. So Kako is obviously the academy pick for Essendon. I think they're going to use him. He seems like he's got a burst of energy, bring some sort of excitement to that forward line for Essendon, and I think he's going to get some early games. I don't know about his score though. I mean, a small forward's not going to score a lot, but I think that at this stage, he's a pretty bankable get. He's only just over 300k. So I think Isaac Kako is definitely an option. Dan Curtin, though, has played quite a lot of midfield through the Crows pre-season. He seems to have bulked up a bit. He's only a straight forward, which is a little bit disappointing. I know he only played predominantly forward when he did get in the AFL side last season, but I think this year, when he comes through, I think he's going to be ready to go, may get some midfield minutes, and a pretty decent defender in his under-18s, I believe. So if he can get some defence, maybe a little bit of midfield time for the Crows, I think that'd be great to see. Then Joe Berry, Port Adelaide recruit from the draft. I think that he'll be a little bit more of a small forward, similar to Isaac Kako, but I do think with Port Adelaide losing a few players in the off-season through delistings like Francis Evans, I think that he could get a go early. There is Joe Richards and Jack Lukosius who they brought into that forward line, but I think Joe Berry could bring something different. He's already said that he plays pretty similar to Robbie Gray, who's a former Port Adelaide gun, so I think that Joe Berry could get some early game support. And then Cleary, I've sung my praises to this guy for the Swans in the podcast quite a lot. I think Cleary gets really shafted by Sydney, especially in that final series. I thought he should have played, and I think he's ready to burst onto the scene. Had a pretty good 2K time trial for the Swans, so I think he's good to go, should get some games for the Swans early. But guys, that's my AFL fantasy team, early stages of the 2025 campaign, you would say. A lot of changes still to come. Make sure to let me know down below what your team's looking like, if you think there's different changes, if you like some of the picks that I've made, and of course, remember to join our AFL Fantasy League. It's going to be so much fun. We grew the channel so much over 2024, so we're ready to just explode next year, and you get involved in some channel stuff, make sure to join. But for now, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you all in the next one.